Um, the beginnings of North America were different from the beginnings of South America. The beginnings of South America were from Spain. Spain was a wannabe Roman Empire. They grew their empire the same way that the Romans did, by conquering and just taking from the people who they conquered. They took all the gold from the Mexicans. They took all of the Aztecs' ornaments, melted it down to gold, took it home, got really rich that way. They're the richest country in the world back in the late 1600s. That's how they could build the Spanish Armada and try to attack England. But that kind of a empire is out of date. It was what you could call, compared to the British Empire, I think an evil empire. And certainly compared to our modern day American empire, that was an evil empire. They had these, back in the early 1400s, back in like the mid 1400s, you had King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, who were just king and queen of a fiefdom of Spain. Spain wasn't a country, it was just a bunch of fiefdoms. And what happened is they were crooks. They were like mafiosos. They took over the whole country by borrowing all of their money, from borrowing all the money off of the Jews who lived there. And they used that money to attack all the other fiefdoms and take control of the country. And then once they had control of the country, they didn't want to have to pay the Jews back, so they created the Spanish Inquisition, and they kicked all the Jews out, so all the Jews had to go to Ireland and Scotland. And then they kicked out the Moors, who were the Muslims in the south. And so then they had complete control over Spain, and they got control in a very evil way. The Pope in Italy disapproved of them, and they even had a war with the Pope, a naval battle off the coast of Italy, which they won because they had more money. And then they decided they were going to go ahead and kind of have their Spanish Empire, just like the Romans had their heyday. And so Christopher Columbus gave them the idea to go to America. And Isabella was a Catholic, and so she wanted to spread her Catholicism. And certainly, I think that they did believe that they were going to do good by spreading their Catholicism. And but she was also kind of lying to themselves, because I think the real reason was so that they could go out and loot. So they went to America. They looted. They looted Mexico. They got the huge silver mines out of Bolivia, and looted the Aztecs. They had a lot of gold and made all their money and became the most powerful, richest country in Europe. And attacked England, and then they lost their Armada, and then they kind of went down since then. But the Spanish still had a empire up until like 1910, when we took Cuba from them. So when they brought their people over to America, they were bringing. It was more of a state, kind of like a state-sponsored exodus of people. It was sponsored by the Spanish crown, for the purposes of making money. So they would just hire people. They would pay people to go over there, like it was their job to go over there. And I think most people didn't really have a reason to go over there, so they were just, I think they got the poor people to go over to America, just individually, just like taking kids off the street who didn't have families, and they took them over there, and so they didn't go over there with their families. They went over there individually, and so they didn't have this cohesive unit when they first started out in America, and they had this very structured society down there. You had with the haciendas, you would have the guy who, if he was Spanish, if he was born in Spain, then he was number one honcho. And then people who had Spanish parents, they were number two honcho. And then if you had, and then it went just incrementally down from there. The more Spanish blood you have, the higher up you are. The more connections you have with Spain, the higher up you are. And then And then if you were like an Indian, you were just basically a slave. And so it's very stratified. So it was a stratified society from the very beginning, and which kind of gives people a lack of hope if it's stratified like that. The poor people kind of just do what they're told and don't really think that they have any way of ever moving up through the ranks, and then the people who are up on top have disdain for those down below because they're told that they're better than them and superior to them. And so, and then also it was like a state-sponsored religion. They were all Catholic, so they were all told what to do. It was this big religion. They were told what to believe in everything from the Pope way back on the other side of the earth. And so that's even more of a reason not to think for yourself. So, whereas with North America, the people who came to North America they paid their own way to come to America. They built their own boats. They came over with their families, mother and father and child, hand in hand. They came here. They created their own little enclaves, and it was kind of like, and then you had the 13 colonies. It was like each colony was its own country, and then they grew, and then so it was people who knew how to, who had a vision and who knew how to unite. And we were much more effective in killing off the Indians. That was a bad thing, the genocide of the Indians, but it did create a country of a lot of that's a lot of like-minded people. We don't have Indians around, so we don't have this group of poor people who we can't relate to, who are just disenfranchised. And so fast forward to today, South America. I was down in South America for 7 years. I lived in Chile for 5 years. I lived in the ghetto in Chile for 3 years. And South America, the people down there, they don't take responsibility for their actions. They lie. They don't seem to understand. They don't understand the concept of having an opinion about stuff, and it's just a carryover of from their beginnings. And so that tells me if you want a healthy country. So why is Europe rich then? Well, America. England kind of has a similar background as the United States. We broke off from the Catholic Church, or England broke off from the Catholic Church with Henry the Eighth, and so they were more independently minded. They had their own Christianity, so people were thinking for themselves more. The Germans were never even invaded by the Romans, and so they were always more autonomous. And Europe in general just has more history and more culture, so that helped them. Whereas South America was just more watered down. And so what that tells me is if you want to have a country that has a good, strong economy, what you need is the populace who think for themselves, who know how to take care of themselves and do business amongst themselves without ripping each other off. And that way, I think multinational corporations like McDonald's are actually a good thing for third world countries, because it teaches people how to do business the right way, how to be disciplined and be structured. And like in South America, I totally lost my train of thought. You need people who think for themselves. Oh yeah, in South America, like in Chile, a big waste of money comes from people not being trusted. If you want to buy something in Chile, you have to stand in one line to